Okay, here we are with Jeff Weaver, and we are at his gallery. And what's the address here, Jeff?
16 Roger Street.
16 Roger Street. This is a great honor for me. I've admired your work for years and have always wanted to meet you, but I've always driven past. And when I'm at work, you're not, it's the whole thing. But finally we got you because you are one of the, when people relate painting in this modern day and age in Gloucester, Massachusetts, probably you and one other name probably come to my mind anyway, you and Mr. Groupie. But what people may not know, or what is your perception, I guess I should ask, of how do you think people perceive you, how you got started? Why don't you describe how you got started? Because I think there's a misconception that you started out as a sign painter. But when we had this little pre-interview, you were telling me otherwise. Why
well,
don't you
I think because, well, any artist is going to begin with anonymity. Very few people know. There might be great artists working in town right now. You wouldn't know who they were unless they have some kind of a public persona or a public face. So that's kind of what I did when I came to Gloucester when I was 18. I was living on the back shore, and then I lived down the fort and so forth. So I spent a lot of time with my drawing and painting and so forth on the waterfront. Something I had done since the time I was probably 14 or 15 years old.
You went to art school though?
I was going to the Museum School of Boston at the time, even though I was living here in Gloucester. At that time in the early 70s, a lot of museum school students lived in Gloucester because the rents were cheap and these old buildings and all that stuff. So here I was, and again, I was doing my artwork, but I had people ask me to do signs, and eventually I did some murals. Some people may remember this Tony's Fruitland operation, which I guess kind of put me on the map in terms of the public face. So people said, oh, that's the guy that does these murals. I had done murals in high school, actually, from the time I was probably in the 9th grade. We did murals for plays, school plays, and stuff like that. So I had my hand in that sort of thing. So, I was doing the murals here in Gloucester, and then one thing led to another. I did the A&M fish truck. It was a big, gigantic truck.
Tom Malloy.
Tom Malloy, the big codfish on the side. And that led to my doing names on boats, and the next thing you know, I was doing... You should
know that truck fell into the water. Okay, Jeff, I'm talking about the truck that fell in, the A&M truck with the codfish that you painted fell into the water. Yeah.
Well, I knew that it had been smashed at one time, and so I had to do a second one. I actually painted that truck twice for them, so... But that sign, it was kind of iconic.
Yeah.
A big, gigantic codfish on the side of a truck. Then I did another one for Gordon King. Some people may remember him. They may know his brother, Donnie King.
Yep.
And he had a big truck that had a big mermaid guy on
all that
stuff.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of that stuff on the fishing boats. I did a lot of work for the Ferraras, who owned the Little Flower, the Vinci Josephine, the wooden ones. Yeah. And I painted mermaids on the bow and stuff like that. And so, I've been around the waterfront for a while. I liked absorbing all that stuff. I've always had a real fascination with that all of that. So I think that, as I was saying to you a moment ago, I think some of that plays out in my work as a person who's, to some degree, kind of on the inside.
Oh, absolutely.
Looking out, And so when I paint boats or I paint morphs and stuff, a lot of times they have like a connection to my own life, but things that I've gone through and so forth. I worked at the railways and different things I've done. So
when you're painting, you're not painting looking at it on the outside. You're looking at it like you feel the inside of these buildings when you're painting them.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the wharf next to where you are there. I worked at. Everybody knows the place is Wally Maggots, and I worked there as when I was probably 18 or 19. And I was up to my waist one time, the conveyor belt broke, and all the whiting came and went on the floor. And there was a pile, waist high. And the guy told me to take a shovel, and I had to shovel it back up into the...
into the pen.
And I shoveled that pile the whole day, a pile of whiting. And when I went to sleep that night, all I could see was those little faces.
The whiting heads.
With the eyes. Yeah. I could see those eyes in my sleep. It was like haunting,
Debbie Clark did a great piece on glass of the whiting.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. please.
Yeah.
The Cape Air Museum.
Yes, yes. So, so that's kind of the story. But I guess what I was going back to the original thing, and people say, oh, that's the guy that does the signs and the murals, which I did. I did to make a living for many years. And
every artist, I mean, unless they're...
Well, they all, a lot of artists, they teach, or I have a friend who's a very good artist in Boston University, an older gentleman, he's in his 70s, but his career involved teaching at Boston University. So many artists have these different things that they've had to do, and fortunately my work did allow me to keep my hand in the painting and painting this and painting that.